to the session on, it's called Towards a Consensus Paper on Synthetic Biology. Actually, it's not on synthetic biology as a science only, but it's on the societal impact of that, and that potential priority paper or consensus paper should take into account the societal aspects in a certain way, which we would like to discuss in this session. It's different from the other sessions, as this is a round table. Although we don't have a round table here, we should have the feeling if there would be one, and I would like to invite you to make comments and ask for clarifications or make your own points, and so we have a vivid discussion throughout this session. For the agenda, give you a short introduction of what we are actually having in mind, give you a short background on the project that this initiative came out, on the priority paper process as such, make some general comments on this paper, and then we have within the paper 6 different categories of points we would like to raise. We would like to go through them one by one and read the 3 or 4 points in each category to you, and then try to have a discussion, and at the end wrap up the like what we have discussed and see how we bring this forward. A few words on SynBioSafe. It's a project funded by the European Commission. It's a 2-year project, the first and, to my knowledge, the only one in Europe, trying to map the ethical, safety, and security aspects of synthetic biology. Within the last, let's say, 18 months, we have done some work on this. We have found that there's also a need to discuss the IP issues and governance issues and issues on public perceptions. Although they were not in the beginning and the focus of the project, we have tried to include them somehow, although we are not the IP experts as such. Try to mention them and take them into account. There are 4 groups involved in the SynBioSafe project: International Dialogue on Conflict Management in Vienna, University of Zurich, the Bioethics Center, Institute of Technology Assessment of the Austrian Academy of Sciences, and in France, ISTMUS. We have last year at this meeting co-organized the ethics and safety security sessions. We have so far published some papers on the societal impact of synthetic biology on biosecurity awareness in Europe, on biosafety challenges, and there's one underway on ethics. We are, for the end of the project, we're going to have a short film on synthetic biology and its societal aspects as a means to promote public awareness and make these issues more visible to the public and to people outside of the scientific community, but also to the scientific community itself. We have a website, and last May we have organized an e-conference, let's say a web forum, in order to discuss the societal categories we have proposed and questions with a wider audience. It was an open discussion. We invited everybody to contribute and to invited everybody to make suggestions. And we had 125 participants, and the summary of this e-conference has been published 2 weeks ago. And towards the end of the project, we thought it would be useful to condense all this, let's say the results, the draft results that we have seem to have found in our project, and merge them or boil them down in a 2-page priority paper to say, okay, what are the most important points that we should elaborate in the future or should receive more attention. We drafted this priority paper. There are some over here in case you haven't seen them already. Maybe Agumoni, can you give it some if somebody doesn't have it? It's on the website as well. We've sent it away to some of you before that. So far we have received 22 comments, and I have to say we were positively surprised by the quality of these comments. They were very thoughtful and very helpful so far, and we will have to make a revision of our draft paper in order to incorporate these very good comments. And of course, here at the SB4, we also like to have this opportunity and get some feedback from you as well. After this meeting, we're going to try to include most of the suggestions as far as possible into this priority paper, and see if we come up with let's say a final draft. We will send it out to you, the ones that are interested to see and comment it again, and then have this as a final priority paper, consensus paper. And part of the project's outcome will be to include this final priority or consensus paper as part of our project recommendations. As we are funded by the European Commission, we think it would be a good idea to give some recommendations to the European Commission, to the scientific officers, to the Directorate General of Research, but also to the various national funding organizations and scientific funding organizations in Europe, but also to the scientists. In the later stages could also be submitted to stakeholders outside of Europe. We have a piece of paper here in case those who are interested and have not yet received some information or would like to receive some our final draft. You can write down his or her email and we'll send it to you, so we'll have another chance to comment on the last draft. Okay, so this was actually the introduction on the priority paper, and as you've seen on the paper itself, there are several categories, and I would like now to go through them one by one. We start first with ethics. Yes. First of all, Agamoni will now read through the 3 points on ethics, and I would like to have a discussion on this point.
Okay. So just to give you all some time
to... Sorry, this is Agamoni Ganguly Mitra from the University of Zurich, and she's a bioethicist.
Mm-hmm. So I'll just go through the points quickly so that you have some time to think about them. Sorry. Okay, first point. Creating and engineering life being central to the vision of synthetic biology, further societal discussion is warranted on the definition of life and of living organisms, as well as the effect various conceptions of life may have on the ethical implications of synthetic biology. An open and engaged ethical debate is needed on the various applications of synthetic biology, particularly regarding the interaction of natural and synthetic organisms and its consequences for the environment, as well as applications either related to human health or using cells of human origin. Further discussion should be encouraged on the possible effect of the distribution of synthetic biology products and on various aspects of social justice and the current global divide. I'd just like to mention that there was a very important point in the initial responses that we got, that we haven't mentioned animal ethics and in some points environmental ethics as well, which we will be adding, but further comments are welcome on this.
Is there any, you think, are you happy with that? Can you live with that, or is something else you would like to mention? Okay, Piers.
Just a quick question. I was wondering whether it was deliberate to start out with what could be classified as possibly the most controversial claim, that creating life is central vision of synthetic biology.
Okay.
Is that to get it out of the way first, or is that just life as a void over organism?
Actually, sorry. That was very interesting, actually, because when we started off with the project, we didn't think this was going to be a major point, and we thought this was the kind of point that people would sort of try and avoid. Interestingly, in the e-forum we had just before this, this is the point that many people tried to address and sort of sent us comments on, and we realized that it was, after all, a very important aspect of it, and this is why it came first now.
Also following up on that, I mean, there's also been the word that we should not use the term creation, but design or construction, in order to use a more engineering principle. But I think, I mean, you can use both words, but in terms of the general discussion, this distinction is not so clearly made. So if you said designing an organism, somebody would understand creating an organism or creating life. And this discussion of, the ethics discussion of playing God or so is actually included in that kind of way to differentiate between that. Jim was second. Thanks.
Questions around power relations and human rights and everything that follows under social justice. Quite a wide bunch of a number of things that are not caught in here. Economic impacts and so forth, economic and social rights. Why did you choose to put this just as one small bit within ethics rather than having a larger section around power, rights, economic relations.
I mean, it was the last point would merit a whole point by itself because it's more important than just a subset of ethics. Yeah, yeah. Actually, we thought about. It's quite short, actually. The last point, actually, to say some more words about it, what we mean by social justice, what its effect could be in order to pop it up a little bit, so to say. I'm not sure if we're going to have our own category because we have already a lot of them and try not to have a proliferation of categories. But I see your point that it's quite short and it could become very important. So it would be we have thought about this in order to make it more, stick it out a little bit more. Yeah.
Do others have any comments on this particular point? Do you think?
Well, I congratulate you all for doing all the things you've done. I have a concern in that if you look at, I don't know if this meeting is representative of the number of, ethicists working on synthetic biology. But you have three broad important topics here. Do we need more people working in the ethical aspects of it? Because I had trouble finding a lot of people working in this area. And so, because I think that then also would enrich the discussion. So I guess it's a question and a compliment.
Okay, thanks. I mean, the reason why we are drafting this priority paper is, and the way that it's that short, is to give it away to people that can make decisions about funding, like public funding or EC funding, and we would like to lobby, so to say, some more initiatives in this respect. So by that we're asking for some more ethicists, I mean, us of course, but also others, in order to look into these details. What we try to do is to prepare the ground, so to say. It was a pilot project. 3 years ago we didn't know a lot what was going to happen in synthetic biology, in which direction it would develop. It was much different from genetic engineering, where we could find some new questions, and we try to work that out, and in order to give some ideas to other ethicists, to bioethicists, in order to work on that. So yes, I think we would need some more ethicists to work on that, and we think that this could be some of the issues or topics they could be interested in.
Just to add to that, I'd actually echo Paula's comments and add my congratulations to what you have got. I think it's a really good start. But just looking at this section, I had a couple of questions to raise. One of them which follows on directly from the discussion we've been having, and looking at the second and third points here. And that is, it seems this would actually be stronger if you framed this in a more conventional sort of ethics framing. So you look at the specific issues that ethicists tend to look at in terms of not just social justice, but all the other aspects of ethics, and then question how synthetic biology fits in with these areas rather than painting things with a very broad brush. The other point is, the first point, I'm not sure that it really fits under the title of ethics. Ethics is to do with dealing with how we develop the rules and the norms of living life, living systems and life, whereas the first point is, I'm not quite sure what it's asking. I know it's a major concern of people, how you actually define life and what it means, but that sort of moves more over to sort of religious concerns and out of ethics and into, I'm not quite sure what it is, but I just wonder whether it somehow needs to stand on its own in some way.
I mean, yes, I suppose that's something I also asked myself when I was writing this, actually, because the way it's now written, it's more of a metaphysical and meta-ethical question rather than an ethical question. Yes. I think what we're trying to get at and not make obvious right from the beginning is that the concept of life is a normative concept. And that's why it's important to look at from the perspective of ethics as well, to say, okay, have we got really a definition of life that everybody's happy with? And if so, what does that mean for what we're supposed to do in ethics? What normative principles would follow from that, for example?
Since this project is about consensus, do you worry when you frame these questions about whether it's likely to converge? Because some of these topics seem to be several thousand years old in different guises, and I'm skeptical that you will make consensus kinds of progress. You will learn things about the discussion, you'll illuminate it, but I don't know that you'll get everybody to have a consensus? And if the goal is to have a consensus, do you want to just try for consensus around the things that you believe it's feasible to have consensus, or do you want to have questions in there where you really don't think you're going to arrive? Either of those things is possible, but I think there's a strategic consideration for you.
Do you mean that it's difficult to arrive at a conception of life?
If you had your open and engaged ethical debate, at the end of the day, you never get 100% of people, so you have to define consensus. But would you get 95%? I mean, you can in a good debate on a good day, you start with 50-50, and as the economists believe, if you and I talk long enough, we will agree on what's true. These debates often do not have that quality.
I just wanted to say, I guess we have two different levels of the idea of consensus here as well. Somewhere we hope that some things will achieve a consensus in the way that everybody says, yes, I agree with this. In another sense, we'd like to achieve a consensus where we could have maybe in a document everybody who's interested and who feels concerned to agree to say that these are important points. So if we look at the concepts of life, these are the important things we should be looking at. And that's in a different way consensus. Perhaps not the one you had in mind, but that's something we'd like to also achieve with this.
I can agree with that. I mean, the consensus is about these points that we think it's necessary to have this open, engaged, ethical debate. And this is our main message here. Somebody could come up and say, no, we don't like to have an open debate. We should do it all by ourselves and exclude as many stakeholders as possible. That would be also a feasible opinion, but we're not going that way. We'd like to say, okay, it's necessary that in the future to incorporate other stakeholders and scientists in this endeavor if it will affect them in one point or the other.
That's a very important point, but then I think you may want to see if people read that sentence that way, because open debate and the question about exactly who gets to debate should probably be better specified. It doesn't jump out at me anyway.
Okay.
Exactly. I was just going to ask, as a follow-up, if you could say a little bit about your methodology in terms of how you're doing this open discussion and debate, and also whether you see a role for non-ethicists, say social scientists.
Okay. I mean, as an example, I mean, we are not going to have this open and ethical debate as part of SynBioSafe until December, obviously. But what we have done as an example, but there could be many other examples, we had this e-conference. It was one possible way to do it, in order to invite as many people as possible. We sent over 1,000 emails, put it on several websites where people interested in this topic could find it, and everybody could engage and send their message. So that was one possibility way to be open in the terms of not excluding anybody that would have something to say. Of course, in a later stage, if there would be many people running down our doors in order to make their say, we would have to make some kind of, find people and to have a meaningful discussion. But at that point, it was more to find people to invite them to take part of it.
Marcus, let me underscore what Paul and Andrew said about this being a really nice start on extremely ambitious but extremely important project. I wanted to say, my reading of that first item there, I think Andrew's right. There is a moral question at stake here, and what you've got, however, is you're identifying a sort of conceptual issue that is sort of logically precedes the moral question, which I think might be best thought of in terms of sort of the human relationship to life. That's where the question about what we actually ought to do gets formulated as a moral question. And in order to understand that, then one would want to think about the conceptions of life. But you're getting here sort of at the playing God sorts of concerns, aren't you? Is that what this first bullet is?
Yes, well, that's one possibility. The other possibility is we might get people saying, well, as long as life is created synthetically, well, it doesn't have any special value, so there are no special normative claims. I mean, that's the other possibility. I mean, we started off, actually, when we started the project, with a normative question about life, whether life had a special value, if it was natural, etc., etc. And then we realized that actually what we need to do is to start off the discussion a bit earlier on, to ask the question as to what is the definition of life.
Right. I think you're right that it's a prior question, but you can just reformulate it so that it brings up the
more or less a
dimension.
philosophical approach. Actually, we had an ethicist from Spain that said, okay, before we start these ethics questions, we have to find out if this is something completely new in terms of philosophical approach to life, and if it's that way, his opinion was that we need a completely new set of ethics to do this. So it precedes the ethical questions or debate at one point. Other people might have a different opinion, say it's the same thing, we don't need any new kind of ethics. But you're right, it's actually preceded a little bit. Yeah. Michelle?
No.
No.
Testing. Thank you. Great. So I'm coming at this so not as an ethicist, and from prior experience, from issues reading this just superficially, that look like what happened with embryonic stem cell research in the United States 10 years ago, maybe almost to the day that, well, not quite to the day, to the month that that paper came out, and several organizations started looking at this. So when I read this, the first things that came to me is that first point looks like a preamble to me and not a point about ethics. It sort of says why you have to do everything below that. So if you move that above the statement and make it that, not that there are different conceptions of life and that's where you want to come to the consensus, but that because there are different conceptions of life, you end up with every point below that, including issues on security and safety. It's that has to do with that. It's because that you can create life that those issues fall out, not because that's the goal of creating life. That may be the goal of synthetic biology, but that's not the reason those fall out. It's because it's a thing you could do. So that's something, and I played with that a little while I was reading it, and I could, send language back around and let people critique that. I'd be interested in how other people come to that. On the third point, by the same token, the social justice issue is of critical importance in considering embryonic stem cells. It was very clear that the social justice issues arise because of where those are derived from. And I think there was, it may not have appeared so on the surface, but there was a lot of agreement that that was a starting point by saying that these come from a special place, therefore we have to make a special effort to consider the social justice issues. And that may or may not be true with synthetic biology products. If you're going to say that, you really have to delineate what exactly is special about them that gives you that. Otherwise, it is the general issue of biotechnology being badly distributed, and that's critically important as well. But if you're going to say it's synthetic biology, then you really have to say why. And from reading this, I don't get that sense necessarily.
Okay. I mean, just thinking about it right now, it could be like the same thing like with any other biotechnology, that we have a new tool that gives more power to corporations, as we have, as Jim has laid out in his session. On the other hand, we can also think about if there's a possibility to use synthetic biology in order to change this pattern, the distribution of power and the distribution of the possibility of doing something with biotechnology, giving it not only to an elitistic part of society that is able to invest money and buy the researchers, but is it that easy to do that some entrepreneurs, also in a developing country, are able to do something with this? And that could change also the social justice by having a technology that enables people that would, without that, not have the possibility to engineer something.
Right, and that is going to change over time. So
Yeah.
it's precisely that statement to make it flexible enough to take that in over time.
Could I maybe quickly say something to what you said about the preamble? I mean, we agree that the concept of life is very important, but we wanted it also to have as one of several ethics points, because, I mean, many people, when they hear ethics in related to synthetic biology, they immediately have this this question, is there intrinsic value in life? But we wanted to point out that there are also ethical questions that are not necessarily related to that, like questions that are related to the applications and to the fact that maybe there is a danger for the environment, or questions that are related to the distribution that are not necessarily dependent on the fact that, on the question of whether there is a normative aspect in life. So that was just one of the reasons why we took it as one point. Yeah, no, I see the point. I just want to.
Over here.
Yeah.
Like there are two more questions. Okay.
So there's not really a definition on synthetic biology, and I was thinking you could almost substitute the word synthetic biology with genetic engineering. And I don't know, I may be missing a point, but I feel like, does that maybe make it a bit redundant in a way?
Okay, so
yeah, that's pretty much
there have been comments about starting the priority paper with a definition of synthetic biology. We haven't done that so far because we send it to people that are working in the field, and as there it's quite a diverse field actually. And the paper of Jane has discussed that there are several different subgroups, and everyone has a little bit different conception. But there could be you're right, there could be a good reason in order to put some initial, very broader initial definition on synthetic biology, in order to be able to show that also to other people outside like the close community. In terms of exchanging terms, that's an important point. I mean, what we try to do is to find issues that are new because of synthetic biology. If you go to the definition of synthetic biology, there, in some way, it looks like genetic engineering, but genetic engineering not being able to fulfill the promises that have been 30 years ago. So, in a way, we try to find out the differences and relate to that, which is sometimes easy, sometimes not so easy. But on the other hand, there are some similarities. That is true. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would claim like the 2 second points, they're just as applicable on genetic engineering as synthetic biology, and I'm saying that without really myself having any definition of those two terms either. But
in terms of genetic engineering, you would have like very simple constructs, and synthetic, what we've seen the last 2 days or 3 days, what kind of organisms people have in mind or kind of constructs have in mind is much broader than was genetic engineering bring about. So that would.
But even if you had simple construct, would you claim that your 2 second points aren't applicable to simpler constructs?
I think I'd agree that many of these points can be and should be looked at in the context of emergent biotechnologies in general also, as well as specifically for synthetic biology.